as the sun drops behind the mountains, bringing a hush to the jungle. It's time for a bedtime story that will fill your dreams with wonder and warmth. Our bedtime story is a tale about the legend of Kong, the king who ruled an island lost in time. Picture a place untouched by man, where dinosaurs roam and sea monsters churn the waves. Get ready to discover the legend of Kong, whose bond with one human would prove more powerful than fire, bullets, or steel. Now close your eyes and journey back through time to Kong's domain. It begins like this. Once upon a time, in a jungle far away from civilization, there lived a rather extraordinary creature named Kong. Kong was a gigantic gorilla who lived on a remote tropical island. He was the undisputed king of Skull Island, the biggest and strongest ape around. Kong's powerful arms could snap a tree trunk in two, and his mighty chest beat like thunder. When he roared, all the creatures on the island trembled. But for all his immense size and strength, Kong was lonely. He was the last of his kind, the only giant gorilla left. Kong dreamed of having friends and family, of not being alone. He longed for companionship. But the only living things that shared Kong's island home were reptiles and insects, birds and other beasts. Not another giant primate he could relate to. So Kong wandered his jungle kingdom in solitude. He kept busy hunting wild boars, battling dinosaurs, and foraging for fruit. He scaled the soaring cliff sides and gazed out at the vast ocean surrounding Skull Island. He sat brooding in the mountain caves decorated with the bones of his ancestors. But no matter how occupied Kong tried to keep himself, deep down the gorilla felt a profound emptiness. Then, one fateful day, a group of humans arrived on Kong's island, led by an ambitious movie director. They came with loud machines, blinding lights, and big boats. Kong spotted the intruders from a high ridge. He was immediately curious about the visitors, but also wary. Who were these small creatures invading his domain? Kong clambered down the rocks and crept slowly towards the humans' camp. He peered through the trees, watching intently as they scurried around, shouting at each other in excitement. They were capturing images with their cameras and exploring the jungle as if they owned it. Kong snorted in disgust. He did not like how these little creatures were behaving. Among the humans was a young actress named Anne. She was kind-hearted and had begged the director to let her join the expedition. When Anne glimpsed Kong's gigantic shape lingering at the edge of camp, she sensed the gorilla's loneliness. While the rest of the crew was preoccupied, Anne snuck away into the thick jungle. She was frightened, but determined to meet Kong face to face. Anne walked slowly between dense groves of bamboo stalks and under hanging vines. Strange cries echoed around her in the still humidity. She scanned the shadowy foliage nervously, but continued pushing deeper into Kong's territory. Finally, Anne stepped into a sunlit clearing dotted with tropical flowers. Standing before her, was the colossal figure of Kong, even larger than she imagined. Anne gasped as she craned her neck to look up at the ape's sheer enormity. He huffed, and the force of his breath nearly knocked Anne over. But the young woman gathered her courage and took a few steps forward. Ever so slowly, she reached out her hand, palm open. Kong stared down, his deep-set eyes fixing upon Anne's gesture. He hesitated, then with surprising care, gently pressed his own gigantic hand against Anne's delicate one. In that tender moment, Kong knew he had found a friend, and for the first time, he felt the warmth of companionship. From then on, Anne visited the great gorilla every day. She brought him juicy fruits and fragrant jungle blossoms. Kong grew to love her kind presence. With Anne, Kong felt content and at peace. But the other humans had become suspicious of Anne's frequent absences. They followed her stealthily into the jungle and discovered her secret friendship with Kong. The men were scared of the ape's monstrous power and did not understand the bond Anne shared with him. The director decided Kong was too dangerous to be kept alive. He ordered his crew to devise a plan to capture the beast. Anne pleaded with him to spare Kong, but the heartless director refused. That night, Kong was lured into a trap and subdued with toxic gas bombs. Chains were tied around his legs and arms as he lay unconscious. Anne could only watch and cry as Kong was hauled onto a massive raft and floated out to sea, imprisoned like a wild animal. When Kong finally awoke, he found himself chained inside the cargo hold of a ship bound for New York City. His captors wanted to put him on display as an attraction. But Kong would not be exhibited like a freak. Using all his might, he broke free of the chains and smashed through the hull of the ship, roaring in rage. The panicking crew unleashed gunfire, but Kong swatted aside the planes buzzing around him like insects. He had been kidnapped from his home and shot at. Now the fierceness of the wild gorilla was unleashed. Kong grasped the planes in his giant fists and crushed them effortlessly. But as Kong battled, he heard Anne's distant screams coming from the city ahead. Forgetting his anger, Kong immediately swam towards her, needing to save his only friend. When Kong reached the strange concrete jungle of New York, he searched relentlessly for Anne. The humans saw him only as a monster and attacked him with tanks and guns. Planes circled Kong, pelting him with bullets. As he climbed the tallest building, still desperately seeking Anne, Kong realized he was surrounded. Though he fought valiantly, finally the wounds and smoke overcame the mighty ape. Kong tumbled from the tower and crashed to the street below. As the light left his eyes, he saw Anne's face one last time, filled with love and sadness. And Kong knew that friendship endures forever, even past death. Though the humans had killed Kong, they could not destroy what he meant to Anne. She grieved his passing and always remembered the bond they shared. While Kong's body perished, his spirit lived on through her. Anne vowed to return to Skull Island to protect Kong's jungle home and preserve the memory of the last giant gorilla. Back on his island, Kong could rest in peace, knowing he had brought meaning to Anne's life as she had to his. Though Kong was the last of his kind through friendship, he was lonely no more.